So Chelsea have conquered the world. What happens next? That is the big question we're going to be focusing on in today's show with some big Todd Boehly quotes. He gave a massive interview to TalkSport about the Club World Cup, about Chelsea, Maresca and the 25-26 season. We're going to delve into some of those quotes, but also kind of the feeling around the club and Chelsea definitely in mentality shift, putting forward at least some statement of intent heading into the new season, which is what I love to see. Also, in the second half of today's show, we're going to look at the potential outgoings of many players who we know don't really have a future at Chelsea, even some that participated in the Club World Cup but still are heading for that exit door. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the show covering the champions of the world. I'm Daniel Childs. Hope you're having a great Tuesday wherever you are watching or listening to this. So I think the best place to start is Todd Boehly. So dust is starting to settle. I know, people heading back from America who are out there from a Chelsea perspective. The players at least get some form of a break. I mean, it is a wildly short break. I mean, it's only a couple of weeks now till we hit August. Only a couple of weeks till the EFL start their season. And whilst all this is going on, whilst we were still out in America with the Club World Cup, we see Premier League rivals starting their pre-season. So it's going to be a very, very small pre-season. We know this kind of for a fact now. Unless there is a behind closed doors game, I'm not entirely sure there's going to be anything other than those two pre-season games over that weekend before the Premier League restarts, which I completely understand. It maybe would have been a bit different if Chelsea went out earlier in this tournament. So we have to rest the players. We have to give them that time. I think the intrigue when we do get to those games is whether it's going to be mostly populated. I think it probably should be by players who either didn't start all the games in the Club World Cup or we really didn't see much of. So you're thinking about the likes of Mamadou Sarr, Dario Asugo, even Andre Santos, who picked up his minutes throughout the tournament, but Andre Santos as well. Even the likes of Liam Delap, Jamie Gittins, other players too, who didn't really feature that much. I hope that's what takes up the bulk of the minutes, because I think we really want to give the bulk of kind of the big players in this squad who've had to play so many minutes for us and done wonderfully well, as much rest as possible. But obviously, we'll cover that as we get closer to the Crystal Palace opener at Stamford Bridge. But this is what Todd Boehly had to say. He was asked by TalkSport a number of questions about the Club World Cup, about Enzo Maresca, about the new season. So let's go through his quotes and I'll give you my thoughts after.
Well, we couldn't have wished for a better outcome for our boys who have done such good work and trained so hard and really came together in America under Enzo's leadership and his direction. And no one gave us a chance to beat PSG. And the boys really thrived and grew on that. And watching them come together over the last couple of weeks in America has been just very special. And I think that form that you've seen, is everything we hoped when we were putting this together with Lawrence and Paul. And Badad and I couldn't be more grateful for the success that they've had, and for all Chelsea fans everywhere. I think the boys have shown that they are a force to be reckoned with, and I think that's what we were hoping for.
I think it is notable. He name checks, of course, Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley, not always the big favourites around Chelsea, and also Boehly. I found it quite notable that Boehly is still the visible kind of obvious face being linked to this ownership, despite the fact that, as we know from like an internal reality of like the power struggle or the power dynamic and who kind of takes up a lot of the responsibility of key decision making, it still is Boehly out there. He is the household name. He is the one who still is vocally speaking about Chelsea, is with the players. He was on that stage alongside Donald Trump the other night. So, I think that is still quite notable in terms of the interest that Boehly has in Chelsea. And I also think, we think about 12 months ago when stories broke about a disconnect and a potential civil war between Iqbali and Boehly, and you've got to believe that, of course, Chelsea's recent months and success with winning the Conference League, getting back in the Champions League, and now winning the Club World Cup has soothed, hopefully, those things over internally. And then finally, they're obviously being asked about the 25-26 season, saying, this is the best quote probably, a force to be reckoned with, which I think is probably the strongest thing he said there. And very much in keeping with what Boehly's like. In public, he's very polished, very cool, very calm, collected. I think he says the right things. He's very, I think, knowledgeable and also experienced in speaking in public terms. I mean, it was always the thing, I said it in my conversation with Nick Pearwell, who, of course, authored the book Sanctioned, and kind of the contrast for him personally as an author getting to interview both Roman Abramovich and Todd Boehly. And, I think that Boehly obviously has personal investment in Chelsea. It's been quite clear that he is vocal about kind of expressing that intent for Chelsea to be successful, and why I think in that sanctions kind of period he kind of stood out so much as kind of a potential strong owner for Chelsea, because he was vocally not only in public giving his opinions about football, but clearly had a long-term interest in Chelsea. I mean, Boehly's interest in Chelsea didn't just spark and ignite because Chelsea got sanctioned. He had interest in Chelsea as far back as 2018-19. So obviously, things are looking good at the moment. And I think the big question for you in the comments is, where do we go from here? I love seeing the quotes, the ambitious and I think correctly confident quotes by Levi Colwell, who said, Chelsea are going for the Premier League title. They're going for the Champions League. And if anyone kind of doubts them, well, look at what just happened in the Club World Cup. And I think internally, for all of us as Chelsea fans, no matter what the outside noise is about the importance of what happened on Sunday, I think we all know as Chelsea fans, you feel it, right? You feel when you see a great performance, just like you feel when you see a bad performance. You can feel it when the club's in a positive way, a positive wave of momentum, as opposed to when there isn't one, and you feel that as well. And we've certainly felt that over the past 12 and 18 months. And I do think that the ambition has to be to get stronger. I don't think, and I think it's been an error at times, and I'm not saying that the Club World Cup triumph is as big as the Champions League, but I think a frustration I've had, and this obviously not under this ownership, but the previous ownership, especially in the latter years when we won the Champions League unexpectedly, when we won the Premier League in 2017, that when we had those big achievements, sometimes by surprise, there was a resting on laurels rather than now we have to cement this strength. We have to cement this momentum. We have to try and build on it, because our rivals are not going to sit back and do nothing. Just before recording this, we have the report from David Ornstein at Liverpool are inquiring about signing Alexander Isak. We hear that Newcastle were going after Hugo Ekitike, of course, a target earlier in the window for Chelsea. And in some of those cases, it's not about because they're going to sign Isak, they're going to try and sign, other players are going to sign, other clubs are going to try and sign good players, that we have to go and sign players in areas we don't need them. That's not the point I'm making. I think we're all very, very happy, over the moon with what we're seeing at the moment from Joao Pedro, who could prove to be one of the shrewdest pieces of business we've done this summer, in terms of everyone wanted to see a big name striker come in, and with him and Liam Delap, we've actually added the right tools. That doesn't mean you need to sign 70, 80 million, as say Arsenal were going to have to with Victor Gyökeres or Benjamin Sesko, other names that have been linked. And Hugo Ekitike, who's probably going to go for a big fee, and even what Alexander Isak could go for if he does leave Newcastle this summer. Liverpool are not sitting still. Man City have acquired a lot of players. Arsenal were acquiring players. So you need to keep moving forward. And I think what Sunday should only do, it's not about rubbishing the development of this squad and the good things that have been done to build this squad and the players and the coaching of Maresca, which needs to be credited as well. It's about, let's add on to that. Let's get better on top of that. Let's not sit back and kind of wait for other things to happen. And I still think there are some additions and areas of the squad that we've talked about, and I think a lot of you reference in my comments that you'd like to see improved upon. I just hope that gives us the financial incentive as well to go out and make those deals, because Chelsea should be aiming to compete for a Premier League title. They should be aiming to compete seriously in the Champions League, and that wave of momentum, you want to try and maintain that as much as possible, especially in a season where we undeniably are going to have to rotate well because of the struggle and probably the fatigue that's going to come to certain players. That's just natural. So we will see what Chelsea do for the rest of this window. I think that's the big thing I want to ask you. Are there unexpected things Chelsea are going to do, or things that you feel might surprise us? Are there positions that still maybe aren't being talked about that much that you think should still be strengthened, even after having an incredible performance like we saw against PSG on Sunday? Because I know a lot of people, right, and it's right to be overly positive about the players at the moment, to give them a bunch of credit and to give them a bunch of plaudits and to talk about their reputation, their increased reputation, about what they could still do at Chelsea. It's not about rubbishing those players. It's a great win, but we need to improve as well. So then we'll talk about players potentially coming in, but obviously players need to be leaving Chelsea, and there will be some names, obviously quite a few, that still have no future at the club. And this is from the Standard. Talks begin as Blues plot ruthless clear out after Club World Cup wins. One of the big things about this piece is that Benfica are opening talks with Joao Felix, a return for Joao Felix to Benfica. Arguably the club he should have probably never left in the first place. I mean, you do kind of wonder the sliding doors career of Joao Felix if he didn't make that move to Atletico Madrid in the first place. But if Chelsea can get something even remotely close to what they paid for him from Atletico 12 months ago, I mean, that would be insane business. Just because some of the early fees and stuff that I've heard, I mean, I think that's kind of, it felt like fantasy, right? Because just based on Joao Felix's performance levels for Chelsea and performance levels in recent years, it still amazes me that he goes for like over 20 million, given how poor he's been. I mean, really is, you can talk about the good business that has been done and in reflection, a lot of the things that have gone really well for Chelsea. But what a pointless piece of business, and one of those that you could see a mile away wasn't going to work out, wasn't a smart move, and proved not to be it. And it really was, a really damning indictment of last summer, and hopefully the contrast to this summer will be a lot different, right? Because it was a move not only clearly forced through because we wanted to get Conor Gallagher out the club, and we needed to have some form of an exchange of a player. Samu Amarodian fell through. Joao Felix comes in, and sure, he does score a couple of goals in the Conference League against some very poor opposition, but really, was never going to elevate himself beyond just being that, a rotational squad player. And then goes to AC Milan and barely does anything. And I think, the reality about Joao Felix is, I've always said this brutally, I think he's a very overrated player. I think that, I think the aesthetics of him seem to please some people, and the small moments, the famous Joao Felix thing is you'll see a clip of him dart round quite elegantly some tackles, but then it's always that final part of his game that then is cut out of the clip. So I think that kind of sums up Joao Felix. I think he is a kind of all-style, no-substance type of player, and why Chelsea need to get him out the door, but hopefully Chelsea can get some form of a fee back for him that is commendable. Obviously, other names being talked about here are that reasonable offers will be considered for Kinnan Dewsbury Hall, but the former Leicester midfielder has not been transfer listed. A decision is also going to be taken on Tyreek George out on loan, though he could also yet stay with the first team squad. There is a list of other names that we've talked through a number of times: Axel Disasi, Armando Broya, Raheem Sterling, Ben Chilwell, Renato Vega. Names that I think we all know have no time left at Chelsea and need to find exits elsewhere. I just, it is one of those issues where, it's why Noni Madueke was up for a big fee, because you can sell him, and there's going to be interest in him. A bit like Josh Achimpong, a bit like even I'd say like a Tyreek George, right? Because there's probably interest in them. It's always difficult to shift those players who clearly, to the outside football world, it's kind of an open secret. They're no longer part of the plans. But I think there are some players there. I think the most challenging one for me by a country mile in all the exits is Raheem Sterling. I was asked about it when I was on an Arsenal show the other day about Sterling, and that still feels like the one that is going to be like a Lukaku type situation where I think a loan potentially. I mean, I'd be stunned if they're able to get it. It'd be great business, I think, if they get him completely permanently sold. But I mean, where that's going to happen with his wages is of course the challenge Chelsea faced last summer. But I do think that obviously the club is in a really healthy place, and I think, are we being, maybe we'll have more kind of focused discussions about this, because it is a little bit of time now till the Premier League starts, and when we get into our Premier League previews and predictions and all of that, we will focus in on Chelsea's objective and where I think they will finish in the table. But I do think there is a feeling at the moment that you want to be in this wave of momentum. You want to feel great about the club, especially after years where we haven't really felt like that, or they're going in this really elite direction. But that ambition to win the Premier League title has to be there, and I think that the confidence that the players are going to gain from what happened the other night. I just, would like to hear your thoughts on the squad construction, where you think certain things need to be improved, where you're really optimistic about certain things. And, if I'm telling you right now, you have to maybe go out there and can only sign one more player for the rest of the window, where are you focusing in on? You only have one signing. If that internally is maybe the thinking, we're still hearing talks about Alejandro Garnacho, which I'm skeptical of. I still don't think that would be a great signing personally. I just, I think the money that we'd have to spend to get him out of Man United, and I think when you've already bought Jamie Gittins, when you've got other players like Esteban Willian to come, and you've just sold Noni Madueke, I don't really think it's a great trade-off. I think I'd rather invest that money elsewhere in the window. And already early reports following the title win kind of say that Chelsea are going in for several areas. I know Simon Phillips was reporting still about goalkeeper and some other positions. So we will be covering that on the show, and hopefully do a Q&A. We'll have some guests on between now and the start of the new season. So thank you so much for checking out the show. Thank you for supporting the show throughout the Club World Cup. Have a great rest of your day. Follow across socials as well at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very, very soon. All the best.